Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome to my Chicago garden. So I have been able to take a breath because the garden is fully planted. I have still some remnants of spring, which we'll talk about a little bit today, but my summer plantings are all in, at least the first crop. We'll talk more in future videos about succession planting and things of that nature. Today we're going to spend some time doing just a quick walk around. I want to make sure you all see where the garden is and what things look like, but I really want to focus on things that are ready to harvest and things that maybe aren't quite ready to harvest. So we're actually going to do some test pulls. We'll take a look and actually harvest a few things. Yeah, let's dig in. Okie doke, so all of the areas we last saw that were planted are doing pretty well, like they were recently planted. So the 20-gallon grow bag, this is probably the most vibrant this area has been in since I've been putting grow bags and containers over here. We have the first signs of the ace bush tomatoes, eggplants, summer squash, that's a white scallop. I left the collards in this grow bag since the other collards in the raised bed were doing so poorly with pest pressure. And then I have some sunflowers that I sowed. Our sweet potatoes are starting to spread out. So we're growing sweet potatoes in here. So they are starting to crawl. And then everything in here is really, it's just exploded. So I can smell strawberries here. So I need to pick some of those. They haven't been the sweetest, but they have been strawberries. And then our pepper and tomato plants. That's basically what we're growing all the way down. And I have the garlic that I need to harvest in the next, I'm going to do a test pull. We're going to do that today. And I want to try to harvest it in the next day or two because it's going to be rainy for like a week afterwards. So taking a step back, this is where our primary green stalks are. And they are still doing well. I have some monstrous beets in here. And then I have a few green stalks that we sowed green beans in. And going back to June now, in the first area, we sowed the seeds. We're starting to get our first beans themselves here. This bed is still troubled as it relates to pest pressure, and I have not followed my own advice. I've not been getting in and out and hand picking. I've kind of left the bed to its own devices. Sometimes it happens that way. More green beans here. And then we have our kale, which has started to bolt. So we'll be doing a picking of that. We'll come back to our onions and our carrots. That's where we want to do some test pulls for at least the carrots, and then we actually want to harvest some of the onions. And so our containers here are doing well. I picked about 20 grubs out of the container of potatoes back there, which is something that I almost never have trouble with inside of my containers. And it's unfortunate. I did do a quick search, and grubs can definitely eat away at your potatoes. So we'll see what comes out of that. Remember, these were the plants that had that struggle with the initial heat, the early heat we get here in Chicago, among other places. And then I think this is our last planted area. So mint is taken off. We got a few different varieties. And then we have our buckets of peppers, which is always a favorite growing area of mine. We're going to take a quick peek of the front yard garden, and then we're going to get to work. How are things going in your gardens? What are you harvesting? What are you waiting on? Drop a comment below. I'm going to start pulling the cover off of the zucchini and the okra plants that are back there. Everything else up here is doing pretty well. I pulled the cabbage. They were about a big fist size, and so I'm thinking of putting rosemary there. Our corn, wonderful. It was absolutely knee-high by the 4th of July. and we have this super tight space that I created this year, and I'll have to get all the way through the season before I determine if I love it. Our tumbling Tom tomatoes, these require water every day. I did 3 plants, so I wonder if I had 2 plants in here, if it would have less of a demand. The smaller containers like this, especially again when it's been so hot, have required quite a bit of watering. So remember, this space originally for a couple of years, all of this from the inside of the trellis to the other side of the trellis, which is hard to see now, was walking space. And then I dug out these little kind of 1-ish foot wide beds on either side, and I had this as a walkway, but that clearly was just too much space. So I, this year for the first time, put these primarily 7-gallon containers here, and we did a mixture of things in here. So I've started to pull some of the onions from this space. Our peppers, these are our Jimmy Nardellos that are looking good. The first plant to really put on like a flush of peppers, which is pretty common when it comes to the smaller peppers. And then I did the lemon balm here. This is another, I think it's white scallop again. Yay! The beginnings. All right, so we have potatoes and a 10-gallon grow bag here. And I'm feeling good that the mystery tomato plant, so this volunteered over in the space in front of the window just behind me. And from the looks of it, it's one of the tomato plants from last year that I did not grow this year. So still fingers crossed here. Cucumbers and things are starting to climb. But boy, did that corn outgrow it. So we'll see. I do have a couple of cucumber plants along the fence line, so I'm not concerned yet. Still need more growth on the cucumbers before we can get to the point of flowers, before we can get to the point of actual cucumbers. And then that garlic is another space where I want to do a test pool. I'm hoping that it's ready so I can avoid this next bit of rain that we're getting. These are all of the potatoes. So this variety is a russet, and so we expect it to be in the space quite a long while. That's like 100+ days. These are still plenty green, but I am just going to go in and see if I have some small potatoes that have formed yet. I typically let my potatoes die all the way back. That's one of the signs when it comes to is something ready to harvest, because I intend on using them as storage potatoes. But if a potato has grown under the soil, it's edible, right? You know, so that is your sign that if there's a potato there, that you have something that's ready to harvest. All depends on your purpose though, right? Oh, before we actually get to work, we have our first sunflower of the season. And that's kind of what this bed is going to be, it looks like. Okay, Doug, so move the green stalks back. They're sitting on both a spinner, but it also sits on a wheel, so it's super helpful when I have the green stalks on the deck or on my concrete patio. So I'm able to kind of nudge them back and forth. And that's the reason why I had a little bit more trouble with a couple of these. The wheels were locked, at least that one was. But I wanted to be able to get really inside of this bed. We haven't been inside of this space in quite a while. It must have been, maybe it was either May or maybe it was more like June, where we fertilized, we thinned the carrots, but I haven't been in here really since then. This set of onions, if I wanted to take them into the kitchen right now, they'd be just fine, right? I'm growing the number of onions I'm growing because I want to store some of them. And so when it comes to storing the onions, you have a better chance of them lasting longer if you let them go through their full growth process. which includes the necks of the onions, the stalks, kind of bending over like this. So this is the sign that this onion is done growing. There's no more energy going into the bulb, and you can pull it from your garden and set it up for drying. And then ultimately, based on the variety of the onion, you know, there's a number of months in most cases that they'll store for. So our red onions are an intermediate day, which I bought accidentally, and our yellow onions that we saw a second ago, those are a long day onion, which is great for growing in the north where I'm at. And so what I want to do is harvest anything with a broken neck, and we'll pull our beets, which this type of beet really protrudes from the soil. So I know that these are ready. And then I want to take a good look at our carrots. We'll pull a couple of those. So we have 3 varieties. Let's see, I may still have my tags here. I think it's Danvers in the first row here. Kyoto Red, which has basically flowered. And I don't know what's going to be underneath the soil, but we'll see. And then I have Envy. So the one on either side of the red carrot is your typical orange carrot. I've had great success with the Danvers before, so I want to get a good look at what's growing. There are probably some weeds I'll have a chance to pull, and yeah, get prepared. We're going to have a handful of days where there's going to be plenty of rain, and so I don't want to leave the onions that are ready in here because I don't want to allow more moisture to get in, which could impede the drying process and, you know, maybe even introduce mold. So I've used my tarp for like 1 or 2 nights when I knew I wasn't going to get a chance to harvest these yet, because I wanted to try to prevent any more water getting inside of these, because again, I knew they were done growing. So these are pretty simple, right? I am just moving the soil away. I can basically shimmy this out. So I've seen people lay their onions outside for the initial drying, as long as it's a dry day, like for the first 24 hours. I've typically not done that. I may do that today. So I'm trying to be careful not to break the neck, but also just trying to get it up. This is probably one of the easier things to harvest. So all in all, these are generally kind of on the small side as far as an onion goes, but for my purpose, it is just fine. So with a lot of these things, the beet leaves are absolutely edible, and I will eat the leaves, whether they're being sauteed, whether they're fresh in a salad, if they still look to be like in good condition. So these are beets that I didn't thin. You can see they're much smaller compared to, you know, I'd say this is probably the potential of this variety of beet. I have about an hour before I have to get ready for work. And I'm not going to have time to actually work with all of this right now, which is okay. I noticed some of the Denver varieties have flowered as well. So I've seen carrots, not as obvious as the red beet, but I've seen carrots kind of show their shoulders, kind of fight their way out of the soil. And that is an example of, oh yeah, it's definitely ready to harvest. This is probably going to be kind of small, but we're going to pull it. Yeah. So if you look at the greens on it even, it's kind of puny. Again, absolutely an edible carrot. So my guess is we'll take a look at some maybe that we've thinned a bit better to see how well they do. And so I'm looking at the carrot top head. These are sitting right next to each other. Thought I did a better job at thinning those, but both seem kind of small, so I'm going to leave them in to grow a bit longer. I don't see any of the yellow onions that have kind of that tilt in the neck, So I'm thinking they need a bit more time. Last year I harvested my yellow onions in August. Alright, so this is supposed to be the red carrot that's in the middle row. And I saw so many recommendations on growing carrots and onions together, but boy do they leave a tangled mess. Maybe my spacing could have been a bit more wide. Let's see here. Oh, interesting. So this is the coyote yellow. Looks like I broke a piece off. No, coyote red. Coyote red. So I broke a piece off, which is fine. This is a bit more of the size that I'm expecting. So let's see, and another couple. And from everything I've read, there's no expectation that the carrot is actually going to grow, the root is going to grow anymore, because again, all the energy now is going into the carrot flowering. I'm going to leave those in the center inside just for a while longer, only because they're pretty. So I should probably expect those pencil-sized carrots for all of those. Now the challenge with leaving them, there's still something that's growing there. So it is taking nutrients out of the soil for what's left of the last phase of my onions. But I'm not that concerned about it. Looking at the onions and the quantity that I have, even though some of these are smaller, I'm still really pleased. The next task will be harvesting these and hoping that the curing process goes well, which there's nothing to lead me to believe that it won't. Okie doke, so for the garlic, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the grower that I get the garlic from, Keen Garlic, recommends 4 to 5 green stalks. Once you have 4 to 5 green stalks left, meaning the others have yellowed or died back, your garlic is about ready to harvest. Also, scapes for hardneck garlic, where they produce kind of that center scape that we harvested some weeks back. You know, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, your garlic may be ready after they either show up or you harvest it. So for this, I am kind of just digging around here. Technically, I could do something similar to the carrots where I'm just trying to see the size. Now, again, whatever I pull up is going to be edible as long as it hasn't rotten. All right. Okay. All right, so here's the first garlic bulb of the season. I think this was music. I'll have to check my notes. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like this could probably maybe withstand this next set of rain. Pull maybe one more. So it doesn't look like it's rotting, which is one of the things that you want to try to avoid. It is pretty damp. I wonder if I can find some plastic to put on top of the garlic spaces just to try to give them a bit more time. I'd actually love for them to dry out a bit because they're pretty damp to the touch. Now I also saw this recommendation shortly after harvesting the garlic, actually pulling back kind of that outer casing, letting it cure nice and dry and maybe minimal dirt. So I've basically pulled them out of the soil and just let them dry as they are. But that definitely is prettier. I mean, I guess if you look at one versus another. And so this is just, again, one of the first layers of the garlic skin, which I wouldn't eat anyway. What I'm going to eat is going to be inside of the garlic bulb. And I bet this would be easier if the garlic generally was drier. Yeah. Okay, I can get with that. All right, so potatoes, and that's actually really pretty, huh? And the shallots. Okay, so this is the shallots. First time ever growing them. They were planted very similar to garlic last winter. I got them in kind of late. I think it was December 30th for both the garlic and the shallots. And I've already pulled one up several weeks back, and I was underwhelmed. And when I say underwhelmed, super small bulbs and not like kind of the bulbs you see in the grocery store. Now, I've never done kind of any reading. Oh, okay. Done any reading on the varieties that are typically in grocery stores compared to the varieties that I purchased, right? You know, so this is like a red. Gosh, I'm gonna go with red shallot. That's all I remember from it. So these are damp as well. Again, we got quite a bit of rain over like the last week, a couple of days, and then we have rain coming, and so the stalks are soft right here where the stalk ends and the shallot begins. And I actually do have a couple that are still upright, which I'll leave. And I have about 12 hours to decide what I'm going to do when it comes to pulling these or covering them with the rain that's coming. So I'm just going in kind of under what I feel to be the bulb and pulling it. And similar to everything we've talked about today, like if it's of any size, like this is edible, right? Funny thing with the shallot, I was at the farmer's market late last year. I'd already ordered the shallots, and I had mentioned to one of the growers that I would be trying out shallots, you know, coming into the new growing season, and they basically were like, you know, good luck, as if to say they're pretty hard to grow. So, oh, look at there. See if I can get you in here. I didn't ask because I kind of didn't want to be discouraged, but I probably could have gotten some tips. I didn't ask about the difficulty with growing shallots, and I'll probably, oh, that's an itty bitty potato. So I'm digging around. Well, let me finish that thought. I'll probably read up on it because I really enjoy them. Roly-poly. I really enjoy them, and I'd love to be able to grow them in my own garden. So I'm finding where the stalk of the potato kind of comes down. This is where further down the seed potato is going to be, and I'm just moving the dirt around to see if there are any potatoes growing. So this one is not really even connected to anything, so no sense in leaving that in the soil basically to be eaten up or to even rot. So I'm expecting the red Norland to be probably, I don't know, a $50 size, so larger than this, but not a huge potato. And I'm expecting the, gosh, what's the difference? So not for the Yukon Gold, which we're digging around for now. I wouldn't expect it to be a baseball size, but gosh, what's smaller than that? Maybe a golf ball size is a good representation. So let's see. These have been in the ground. I planted the seed potatoes just under 80 days ago. And that is about a sweet spot for both of these varieties. Let's see. Trying to be careful not to disturb the plant too much, but also to try to locate some potatoes. Good news is the soil is still pretty like damp, not sopping damp, but that means that my watering, at least at this point, is doing well. And we still have quite a bit of time, I think, before the greens die back. Okay, I found something in here. So that is a yellow potato. That's for just to go through the process. I can feel it dislodging from the plant, so it was still connected and potentially would have continued to grow. So smaller in both cases than I would want. Like this is winning as I'm just digging up some potatoes for, you know, my breakfast. but I would want these potatoes to be larger than this. And that's, again, these are edible, but we also see that there's still some pretty good growth that's happening, it looks like, on the plant. So they still have some growing to do plant wise and then potato or tuber wise. So this is probably the smallest of what we're getting out of kind of today's efforts, but not unexpected given, again, where we are. I won't disturb the russets just because I know that they are more like anywhere from 100 to 120 days for a crop. And whatever I dig up, if there's anything under the soil, would definitely be small. Okie doke. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below, and I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one. Oh, I'm going to pick a couple of the cherry tomatoes. It's first of the season for me.